Welcome to another edition of the In the Paint Show, episode 177, special MLK edition. We're going a little day later than we normally do because of MLK holiday. How are you guys doing out there, Ronnie and Chelsea? I know we got a lot of weather, inclement weather around the country, but besides that, I think everything's pretty good. How are you guys?
I'm doing my best to hang in there, honestly, Ronnie. I am very much from Las Vegas and very much living in Oregon now, and it's snowing out here. So I'm in the house, I'm working from home, and I'm just not used to it. So it's a very weird experience for me, but I'm just happy that at least I have a home to be in, and I'm warm and I'm good on the inside, but I hate the snow. So hopefully it ends soon. What about you, Ani?
Yeah, I'm good. Like it was snowing yesterday. Then the sun came out and the snow went away. But then they canceled school for everybody in like all these places out here. So we have an inclement weather day and it is like 40, 50 degrees outside and there's no snow. There's literally no snow outside. There's not an inkling of snow, but everything is shut down because of yesterday.
No doubt. And that's what happens a lot of times from what I could tell from. I'm no snow expert by any means, but when I follow the teams around the country, it's always like the hard snow hits, then they cancel the next day, and that's when it clears up. So we did have some cancelizations, last week and this week in various places. So some teams missed their games. They either rescheduled, most of them rescheduled and postponed to later in the year when it maybe they can get it in when the weather's not bad. But we got a lot of things to talk about. We'll get to those high school and the high school realm. We're going to kind of talk about that, how it relates to like NBA draft and the elite players and obviously the great results. Mostly that came from the Spalding Hoop Hop Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts. But there's a lot of other events, a lot of other things to talk about. Chelsea, what's the latest out there? What did you want to talk about? I know, speaking of weather, let's talk a little bit about the NFL.
Okay, so the Bills, first of all, I don't understand personally, and I'm, very not diehard, just, casual NFL fan. Yeah. But, I'm looking at the Bills stadium and where they're playing these games, and it's absolutely insane with the weather that they allow this to happen. I believe they had to change the game from Sunday to Monday, and they were able to clear off the field, and then they're tweeting like, hey, we're paying $20 an hour for locals to come plow the snow out of the way. Like, I think at some point it becomes counterproductive. I get that maybe it's tradition, maybe we're doing this because we have some type of home court advantage, but absolutely not. I personally, as a player, would not be functional. Like, if the gym is cold, it takes me 2 quarters to warm up my knees. So I cannot imagine playing in 10-degree weather. That's absolutely insane. I'm not a fan, honestly.
Wow. Ani, I like that home court. What do you think? I mean, I know those cold weather teams love that home field advantage. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think you should have like a indoor type of alternative at least. Like, I think we're in 2024. Let's have an indoor alternative. So if it's like 1 degree outside, we're not playing football when it's 1 degree weather. I mean, simple enough. I mean, we have technology now that we can do that. Let's do that. We don't have to pay randoms $20 an hour to clear the snow out of the stands or on the field. Like, I mean, come on, bro. I get it, but I mean, we're too far advanced technology wise. Like, come on, bro. Like, have an indoor alternative.
Well, I just think for Green Bay, and I mean, they have I think they have a waiting list for their season tickets for maybe 50 years. Like, it's ridiculous, right? So they love that home field advantage, and they've been a pretty successful franchise. Obviously, they won the first 2 Super Bowls, and they've been successful. But Minnesota I just remember Minnesota when they were good, they had an outdoor field and it was really dingy, cold, dreary. And then they got the Metrodome? Yeah, they got it like the dome. But Buffalo, it's just like, it's been like that. I just think the people in Buffalo are used to that weather. Us three really can't relate too much, I don't think, because it's just like, hey, yeah, for, December, January, February, it's going to be ridiculously cold. But I think they relish it. Like you said, Chelsea, you're in cold. If you're a diehard Bills fan or a Green Bay fan, like that's something you look forward to cheering for them when you're dealing with like the weather issues of your everyday life, But I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy.
Man, the fans are getting hypothermia in the stands. The players, people, they're trying to throw the balls going all over the place. Like, no. Like, Tua was playing with Kansas City, and who the Dolphins play? Yeah, the Dolphins played Kansas City, right? Tyreek Hill, lips white, wearing short sleeves because he wants to prove that he's tough. I don't think these are the best conditions for the players. Like, I totally, like, I guess I get tradition, but I would never be that much of a fan of anything to attend. And I just feel bad for the players that are playing, because how can you be your best when you're miserable? Like, it's like torture.
Oh, yeah. Many games have been that way in the NFL over the years. The weather's played a huge issue.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ani.
No, I will agree with you, Ronnie. Like, people in Buffalo, like my boy Alex lives in Buffalo, and it is awful this time of the year. And he just used to, he be walking around like,
you get used to it.
Yeah, snow is like to his hip and everything, and they're just acting like that's normal. You're right, but still, like, that's not a condition to be playing football in.
Sure. And that's crazy. One thing I think about is like OJ Simpson and his demeanor in the trial this century. Everybody knows the trial. I mean, it was the biggest thing going at the time. It was ridiculous, but he was always like, the guy is from San Francisco, and it was like, he's cold, and he just had this like awesome demeanor about like, hey fellas, it's here OJ Simpson from Buffalo, and it's like freezing outside. I just remember how big a smile he had on his face, and he'd be like, I want you to introduce, like the electric company. They're like, because the old line was called the electric company because they kept the juice on. That was the whole joke of it, right? His buddies were electric, and he would introduce him. He's like, here's my lineman. And like, he just had this great disposition about it. And inside his knees, or like you said, Chelsea, he is like freezing,
frozen. Yeah,
it's bad, but like that dude could play up to the media like crazy. It was ridiculous how good of a pitchman he was, and how good of a endorser he was. Like, he was just a natural, And I just always thought about him being in Buffalo. It's like that weather was just crazy, and he would just be playing, So interesting theme there. We're not gonna spend too much time. I just thought it'd be interesting. No, I do get it, and yeah, it's crazy how they had to move the snow, but I know the fans there kind of relish it in many ways. It gives them something to cheer for and a home court advantage, as you said, Chelsea. But speaking of home court advantages, what was going on, Chelsea, with UCLA, USC, as we switched to women's college basketball? The second game was at the Galen Center, correct?
Yes, USC was hosting this past weekend. Incredible game. I wish it would have been televised. I feel like, we kind of drop the ball sometimes on these moments between, high level teams. These are both two top ranked teams. Game wasn't on TV, nowhere to be found, but the game was all over social media because, of course, the freshman phenom Juju Watkins just brings the fans out. Like, Chris Brown is at the game, like Sweetie's at the game, like all these random people. And people that you don't, Chris Brown and Juju, he's been seen with her a lot. So I will say that he's probably a fan and they know each other, whatever. But, I was shocked to see Sweetie there, but, she lives in that area. So maybe she just wanted to pop out to the biggest attraction of the weekend. I was hearing that the line was out the door, and ultimately it was a just down to the wire competitive game. USC came out on top. I think Juju had like 32 or 31. Played a little bit better efficiency wise than she did in the loss versus them previously. And that was pretty much the game that everyone was talking about, even though we couldn't really watch it. Other than that, South Carolina is still atop the power rankings on women's college basketball. They're 16-0. We don't see a crazy amount of movement on the women's side, but there was a couple of notable losses too. LSU lost to Auburn, which was a very strange game. I wish you guys would have saw the ending of that game, because Auburn was, just giving it to them, which the SEC is a super tough conference. But like the last play of the game, like I don't know if she drew up this play or whatever, but it was like an isolation at the top for Angel Reese. So everybody that I know of, and all the fans were like, "What the like?" I feel like, I don't know if Angel just took the ball and said, I'm going to go, but I feel like that is very poor coaching with the game on the line for you to put your player in that position if that's not her game. You could have easily gave it to her on the block. You could have had a guard advance the ball and find her. If you want her to get the last shot, I get it. But literally, Angel trying to go between the legs, behind the back, like at the top of the key, and she gets ripped, and that was the game. They were down 2 points. The other one of the Auburn guards steals the ball from her when she's driving to the basket, and that was the ball game. So LSU, kind of blew that one. But Auburn's a very good team. The SEC is a tough conference. I would say besides the Pac-12 from top to bottom, those are two toughest conferences in women's college basketball. But it's a lot of good games and excitement going around. So people need to tune in.
Yo, I watched that. I watched that play. What
are your thoughts, Ani?
I didn't. First off, yes, probably do ISO with her on the block. I think I see her rationale though. If you ISO her, you give her a post touch, they're going to double team, right? So I guess you want to do an ISO at the top of the key. The problem for me was the spacing.
Yeah.
The spacing was bad. You had two people on the block. Like, is she going to drive? Where is she going? Like, it made no sense. It was that. Another thing I was like, was it more like, because I've had this happen as a coach, like, hey, coach, give me the ball. I got it. Like, I'll make sure we win the game.
That could have happened.
Yeah, and all right, man, I'm going to trust you. You're my best player. I'm going to trust you. And then they flop. And then you're like, okay, I can't trust you no more. But like, but no, seriously, I didn't necessarily mind the play to the top of the key because maybe they thought that she would get double teamed on the block.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you want her to take the final shot. My problem is, why didn't you just have shooting around her and let her drive? And then when they collapse, she makes the kick to the open person.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you have two people on the block, tell her to drive, and then somehow make a decision when she's not used to, like, okay, in order for her to like have made that drive, survey the defense, make like a thread the needle pass, like, to the person in the dunker spot or whatever to finish, that takes someone that has a high feel as a passer. That's not Angel Reese.
Mm-hmm.
All you had to do is say, hey, look, if you're going to do that, have her top of the key, let her drive. Hey, Angel, look to your right. They're going to double team. It's going to be wide open. Just pass here when they collapse. Hey, they're going to be open on the wing because they're going to collapse when you drive. Instead, you had two people on the block, and then you want her to be a decision maker in the scenario. Because I know she's been dribbling more. I've noticed like this year she does dribble more around, So I know that's something that she's trying to like add to her bag. But she's not at the point where you want her to try to make difficult reads and passes, especially late in game. I just thought that was wild. I thought the spacing was wild.
Yeah, they did actually have two shooters on the wings, but they had two people down low too, which there's no strategy. I would have liked to see her get some type of maybe a brush screen or whatever and then try to get downhill because that's more realistic. And even when you talk about her dribbling, there's different kinds of dribbling, Ani. You know that. Advancing the ball, she can do. But when it comes to isolation and playing with the ball at the top of the key, that's not her game at all. She literally was like waiting. Okay, over here behind the back, like that's just not her game. So it was just weird. And all basketball fans that were watching just didn't understand it. And they basically blew the game, basically with just that final play. But I will say too, like credit to Auburn though, because Auburn outplayed them. Like Auburn was outplaying them. Like, but I'm saying LSU, on a day that they're not their best, because I maybe she gave Angel the ball because Angel was actually hooping. She was the only one on the team that was actually, performing pretty well. The rest of the girls were kind of having an off night. But even then, like it's still a 1-possession game. So just one good draw up of a play or, something like that could have still won you that game, even though collectively your team performance wasn't great.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now that brings me to my next point, Chelsea, and I'm going to get your hot take, put you on the hot seat a little bit here. Is 2 questions.
Okay.
USC or UCLA, or either one making the Final Four? Is LSU returning to the Final Four?
On the women's side?
Yes.
UCLA. I'm not I'm a huge fan of Juju Watkins, but I don't think their team collectively, when you get into the playoffs, like you need horses. You need people that can really like get to it. Now Juju's going to get to it. and she's going to have 30, but the score's not going to be 31-30. Like, you need other people that could do stuff, and not that they're not capable, but I think UCLA is deeper. I think they have a more complete team, and UCLA had a couple people that were down and out with sickness in the actual game. So I don't want to take away from USC's win, but like, they didn't start their original starters. A couple girls had non-COVID illnesses, in and out, not really playing their usual minutes. I think overall UCLA is still the better team, and the rankings still reflected that, because they have still UCLA higher than UCLA, or USC is still below UCLA in the rankings. They didn't jump them. So I can see UCLA creeping into the Final Four. They're a legit team.
And how about LSU? Are they returning, or are they just too much, not as good as last year? Maybe not coming off the block good. You know, sometimes that happens. Complacency, or now can they put it together for 5 games and then, 5 wins, they'd be back in the Final Four?
They could definitely put it together, just because individually the team is just very talented, like at every spot. So it's like, when you have a team with that much talent, you can't really like count them out. You know what I mean? Sure. But I think that there's better teams collectively as a whole, and that they can easily lose in the second round of the tournament on a night where they're just playing crazy and, they don't have that star power. But they have, in their starting 5, pretty much everybody's capable of going for 20 points, on a given night. And I think that that's just hard to compete with on a team that maybe only has 1 or 2 dominant players.
Gotcha.
Now, I have a question. Do you think, like you made the point that you have 5 people that are capable of scoring 20 points? Do you think that is the reason that they can't make it? Like, is that not enough shots and too many people that can put up those type of numbers? Do you think that'll be part of a reason that, like, once you get down to the tournament, and people really game plan and they take someone away, like, 20-point score per game type scores, in their mind, they can miss 3 or 4 in a row and they feel like, I can still get 20. Like, if a couple of people struggling, they keep trying to force shots. Do you think that could be a problem when it comes to the tournament?
Yeah, I do. I think their biggest weakness, in my opinion, is just their chemistry. Like, you have a lot of great players, but I've not really seen, I've watched them play several times on TV, and they win because they're just better, like, individually. Right, yeah. But I'm not saying like, wow, that was like an awesome like team win. Like, she did her part. They don't have those kind of wins, in my opinion. And when they play teams that are equally talented or have 3 stars of their own, like Colorado in the first game of the season, who kind of caught them slipping. But Colorado has 2 to 3 very good players that can match up with LSU, and then they lost. So it's very easy for them to lose, in my opinion. And I would not be shocked if they lost in, the round of 32, the round of 16, because it just takes a team that's, has the chemistry to kind of beat them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Makes sense. Good insight there, Chelsea. The last question I have is a little bit more about just the kind of like the makeup of women's college basketball compared to the men. Is there a team that you can think of on the women's side that have almost a whole team back, but the chemistry or mainly like the defending champs, and they had most of their team back, and then they just weren't that good the next year? Has there been a team like that in the last 10, 15 years? I can think of that on the men's side, but I don't know about the women's side.
I would say the biggest changes on the women's side are just, especially with like the powerhouse teams. You talked about just teams that are just repeating or in the mix every time. Like, UConn has been hobbled with injuries. Like, they get their girls back, but everybody's hurt. South Carolina had 5 girls go to the WNBA. They didn't all stick, but okay, they left the team. So now their team is young, So I think the makeup definitely changes. And then also with the transfer portal, people are just kind of in and out. And that's just kind of how it goes. So I haven't, there's not really a team that I can just say this team is just stuck together and they're kind of thugging it out. Even LSU wins the championship, and then they get the 2 best players in the transfer portal, and Anissa Morrow and Haley Van Lieb. So their team wasn't the same. They just stacked up with 2 more, supreme players. So that's kind of just how it's going. And I think it's not exactly the same as men's college basketball, but it's very similar. I think the transfer portal is kind of establishing everything, and there's constant movement, like there has been for the last several years in the off season, and people just making decisions to go try out a new place.
Yeah. I just think historically, I haven't heard too many teams like that. The only one I think of 2 of them, I guess. We talked about Cheryl Miller last year. They won 2 titles. And then her senior year, they lost to Texas. And I think that was like, interesting. She won young, but I don't think the team was as strong as she got older, but they didn't win. And then Shamika Holtzclaw senior year at Tennessee. That was shocking. I mean, they lost to Duke, and Duke won the championship that year, and it was like, what? They didn't forfeit. They've been winning. The team was really strong, and they just got upset. But again, every team is slightly different, but the main catalysts or the main players were back, and they didn't. They didn't always repeat. So those are the two that I thought of, and I didn't know if there was any team recently that was like that, but I don't think there is going to be in the future because, again, every team's going to have a different roster.
The last teams I could think of is obviously that South Carolina team. They won the championship and then they lost the next year. And then obviously UConn, when they had all those years of back to back and Breonna Stewart's winning 4 women college basketball, championships. But I think those days are gone. And there's a lot more just parity in women's basketball these days. Like, it's not just UConn and Tennessee anymore, which we had a very good 10-year run where it's UConn, Tennessee, and then it was everybody else. But now it's like anybody can win. Really, there's legitimately 5 to 7 teams in women's basketball that could win a championship this year, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that makes the sport more popular, I think, and better. Because, like you said, it was Tennessee for the late 80s, all through the 90s, then UConn, and it's changed. So it's changed for the good. Speaking of change, speaking of making a move, speaking of something that needs to change in order to get to the next level. Now we're changing gears to talk about the NBA a little bit. We're obviously, heading toward the trade deadline, and I wanted to get your guys' takes on, teams are, again, we always talk about, we know who are the championship contenders, Boston, Milwaukee. We know who the contenders are, but the teams that have to make a move, so on the pack and go into the lottery, or that can make a push. Ani, I'll start with you. I'll get 2 from each of you, but maybe 2 teams that you see that have to make a move, and we'll just go 1-1-1-1. And Ani, I'll start with you. What's out there? A team that's kind of in the middle of the pack, stuck in the mud, that needs to make a move.
I'll start off with Dallas Mavericks for sure. You're kind of in the situation right now. You're 6 in the West right now. They're going to be a borderline play-in team. You have Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
You got to contend with him now. That's how I look at it. Especially when you sniffed the Western Conference Finals, 2 years ago? Excuse me. You got Kyrie Irving. Yeah. You got you got the big fella, so you got that centerpiece, but they need another frontline prospect. They got to compete and they got to contend. I think they got to put a team together where Luka can feel comfortable. Like, hey, we're really actually trying to contend. I want to stay here for another 4 to 5 to 6 years. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So for me, I think Dallas is really in that scenario because if you look at it, let's say you lose in the first round, or let's say you get in the play-in, or you don't make the playoffs, or something along the lines that happens. Now you're doubting. Now next year is like, we better do something, or we're going to lose Luka. You see what I'm saying? Or he's going to demand a trade, or he may mess around, demand a trade in the offseason. I definitely, and we know how that stuff can go. Sure. I definitely think it's important that the Mavs make a move for that third guy. Right now, that's Tim Hardaway Jr., and he had a 40-point game against the Pelicans yesterday. But Tim Hardaway can't be your third best player for a championship contending team. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the reality of it. So I think you need to get a third guy, if that's Pascal, if that's ideally a front court guy. It may not need to be a third guy. It just needs to be a quality front court guy because you lost versatility and depth when you traded Dorian Finney-Smith and those guys. So I think Dallas needs to make a trade to upgrade their front line and add more depth. If you like, I've seen them play against the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. The one thing those teams really get us on is their front court depth. Because you're trying to, because Lively and Powell aren't enough. You know what I mean? To compete out west. So that's my opinion. I think the Mavs got to make a move to really have a team together. Even if you end up being the 6th team in the West or the 7th team in the West, you have a roster that can compete. If I got to go to Denver at home, I can still compete against them. If I got to go play Minnesota early in the first or second round, I can compete against those guys. So for me, you got to do that. You got Luka Doncic. You need to try to. It's a win now, in my opinion. When you have somebody like that, it's not a win later. 3-4 years ago it was a win later. Now you're on some win now stuff.
Gotcha. That's a good pick. Chelsea, how about you? You staying in the West, or is it looking at a team out East?
I'm gonna stay in the West, but real quick, I want to put Ani on the double hot seat and say, okay, you said they need a front court player, so give me a name. Who changes their team?
Pascal Siakam.
But what do they give up?
You may give up Tim Hardaway. You may give up Josh Green.
Wow.
But I really think that, and then when you give a Pascal, guys like Jaden Hardy and some of those other guys, they just gotta be solid. They got to be solid, But Pascal helps with that front line. I think our front line is what's gonna kill us. When it comes down to playoff time. Yeah, you may give up a Hardaway, a first-round pick, and Josh Green, which Josh Green's been very good defensively as well. Not like Luka and Kyrie are just the greatest defensively, but you gotta get you need quality frontline depth on this roster.
You think the Raptors give up Pascal for that though?
You put some first-round picks. It depends if you can somehow mush out 2 first round. Okay, if you're the Raptors, okay, so I'll break it down even further.
Yeah.
The 224 and 225 draft is supposedly not great.
Weak.
Okay, this says weak. Time will obviously tell. If you're the Raptors and you got the Mavs 226 or 227 first round draft picks, let's say 226 and 228, what are the Mavs going to look like in 226 and 228? You may mess around and have a top 5 pick. So you have 2 of those. You may have a top 5 to 10 pick in 2 out of the next 3 years, plus your pick. So really, you mess around, what do y'all look like in 228? You see what I'm saying?
I get it.
You got to look
at Tyrant Stokes. You got Tyrant Stokes on your team.
Let's be real. Luka, Kyrie, and Pascal, we're in 224, 225. They got about 2-3 year lifespan, right?
Together.
After that, it's going to drop. So what that team looked like by 227, 228, I may have me a number 3 overall pick in the draft.
Okay.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Plus, I'm rebuilding, so I'm going to have my own.
Okay.
No doubt.
I get it.
So that means the Raptors are they going to a straight rebuild real quick? Are the Raptors going to a straight rebuild already?
Do the Raptors know they're going in a rebuild? Their coach told me Scotty Barnes was the face of the league. So they need to know that they need to rebuild.
I think they're liking this.
That mud. They're in the mud.
Yeah, it's like that mud. Because
15,
you got
25, they're in that
because you got to it's like a test, in my opinion. Can Scotty Barnes be your guy? Okay. RJ Barrett, can you kind of revamp or maybe not revamp, but can you kind of steer him into being this superstar that, you kind of looking to be? Can Emmanuel quickly, can he become this, I don't want to say Tyrese Maxey-esque, but can he be this young, real star in the league? Those are investments. They're really making real investments for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly want to be a starter and have the ball in his hands. RJ Barrett, he kind of had that in New York, but he wasn't very good. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. Can you kind of mold him into what that looks like? So to me, it's more of a test than anything. But the problem is how long do you want to keep having this test? Because if it keeps putting you in the mediocrity trail, then it is what it is. So I think they should rebuild, but it is fine that they're testing now. I think this semester is a good time to test and see, can you get RJ and quickly to be players that, you think they can be with Scotty Barnes? If so, then you got a team that may be another piece or 2 away down the road.
Fair enough.
I'm not sold on any of their players, though. I'm sorry. I feel like they have good pieces. They are so far away from being a contender. And Scotty Barnes, who I think is an exceptional young player, like, do not get me wrong, he's not going to be the face of the league. I'm very curious to see how he is going to be, since the coach said this, as a franchise cornerstone. And I think they just have good pieces. Nobody like exceptional, incredible. What's the direction of the team? Like, I think they're very far off, in my opinion. So,
Fair enough.
On that note, I will give my team, who I feel, or I guess player. What are we doing? Team or player? That team. Okay. Team. I want to say I'll keep it in the West, and I will go with the 12 seed Golden State Warriors. I mean, I know that we're our beloved Splash Brothers, narrative and stuff. That's come and gone. I would like to say. You had the band together. You guys won 4 championships in 6 seasons. But it's over. It's over now. The Warriors are so bad as a team. Stephen Curry, who is still very much playing like he's in his prime, even if you want to say age-wise that he's outside of it.
Sure.
There's way too much for him to carry for them to even have a chance to be formidable. Like, he's getting his 30 points so hard, and even then they're empty because sometimes they're just down 20. Like, I think that they very much so need to make a move. They very much so need to break up the band. Everybody on the roster should be available with the exception of Steph Curry, as far as I'm concerned. And, don't waste his prime years. He still has 3 very solid years of basketball left to play at minimum. Like, you need to get some people around him if you guys, huh?
We need to go back to about episode 152. You said Curry was going to be good for the next 7 years.
Oh, yeah, you did say that.
And what year? Where was this?
You did say that. Nah, he ain't lying. You said that.
Okay,
and it was after they beat the Kings. After they beat the Kings last spring.
So that was last year or 2 years ago?
Last year.
Okay.
No, but that's true. The point is how quickly things can change. To your point.
Yes, I agree. But even then, based on his numbers, he's still doing just fine, just like LeBron, like doing just fine. So if you can lighten up his load and not make him have to, rip his hair out every single night because of the team and how they're playing, then maybe we would be able to stretch it to 7, Ani. But at this point, he's stressed out. He's going to be out of there in 2 years.
He's going to be, his production is going to go down.
I look at the poor man, his face. He's always.
Now, let's talk about this real quick. Again, just to go back to the Warriors. I just wanted to mention this is the Warriors are 18-22. The Rockets have a better record than them right now. We've been ripping the Rockets on this podcast for 2 years. So
deservedly so.
Yeah, delivering so, and maybe the coaching has made a difference, and because the Warriors is like, ouch, you're 18-22. That's like you said, Chelsea. That's just putting wear and tear on the one player they want to keep, and the rest can be part of a package. But you're losing value every month, and for surely every season on what you got.
Mm-hmm.
Draymond Green has already no value compared to what he did 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Clay's value is. Does Clay have any value?
No.
Look, Ani's yawning, so we know he has no value.
It's low. Nah, I mean, here's the thing about the Warriors. What's telling is, like Kuminga and those guys want a bigger role, right?
Sure.
Like some of the young guys want a bigger role, and it's like, okay, now you got a bigger role. And we're 18-22. Yeah. Some guys were at like the thing. I felt like Golden State did it the right way. You kept developing with your core. You kept trying to win with your core, but you also want to bring these young guys up. The problem is, like, I'm not saying Kuminga's been bad or Modi. No, I'm not saying all that. But I think the main problem is that where you need some of those other guys to really step up, they're just not there yet. Or maybe that's just not them. You know what I mean? And so now you're in a situation you're going to have to make some changes, probably with your young guys. Maybe have to trade a couple of them to get, like an older starter, see if you can contend for another 2 years and stuff like that. It's interesting because the young guys just wanted more opportunity. And then it's like, okay, you get the opportunity and then look where we're at.
Well, I disagree a little bit, though. Like I say, no GM or no franchise is going to, turn down 4 championships in 6 years. Like, that's absolutely incredible, amazing. Right. I get that part. But I don't really think the Warriors have done a great job from a development standpoint. And I think that those young guys are getting the opportunity now, but it's like, are you just throwing me out there, or did you, get me ready to really be out there? Like, so I don't feel like they really did it that way. I mean, and we saw that with Wiseman too. Like, they gave up on him after.
Everyone's gave up on Wiseman.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, I don't view the Golden State Warriors as some developmental, like, get our young guys in, we're going to get them ready. Like, I don't view them as that. I view them as a team that had a very strong core and were very well connected, had players that really fit their system, and Draymond Green and Clay when he was catching, shooting, and high level defense. And, I just, all of those things have went out the window. It, like, literally in the shortest amount of time. They're not athletic. They're old. Draymond is here today, gone tomorrow, 5-game suspension. Clay has just got awful from a statistics standpoint. And, credit to him for fighting back after those 2, injuries that he had and still being able to win a championship. But he's a shell of himself in terms of the player that he used to be. So it's like, I feel bad for Steph because Steph still has a lot in the tank. And I just feel like you can wait and wait and wait. But this team as is, the young guys are playing, they're getting more opportunity. This team is going nowhere. So just do it now, because you're going to blow up the team at the end of the season anyway, if you guys don't do well, right? So you're just on pace for that. You're just kind of delaying the inevitable if you wait till the end of the season, when you can try to use. And unfortunately, you're going to have to use your young assets, because I don't feel Draymond and Clay are assets really, to most
Wouldn't be
teams.
to me.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Chelsea. What happened to? Okay, we know what happened with Poole, but like Looney, Wiggins, and Kuminga, a year or two ago, we were speaking pretty highly of them. Like, and then is Wiggins just not as good as we thought when it just all came down to it, or just struggling, or can he regain some of that he had during the championship run?
Well, honestly, Wiggins is the biggest question mark to me. Like, what did happen to him? Like, I don't understand why he's so bad. He's still relatively young. Like, he was a huge piece when they beat Boston, 2 years ago. So that is one person that honestly blows my mind. I don't really understand, maybe the system in its entirety is not clicking on all cylinders anymore. And he's just kind of like, kind of falling off. Looney has always been a role player. So it's like, he's just doing, he's averaging 6 points like he, like he did in the last, he's the same. So I don't look at him. And then Kuminga is young and trying to figure it out. And, I think that people are intrigued by him because his athleticism and what he can be, but he can't play really impactful minutes to me on a championship team because his IQ is to the floor. Like, he has to, you got to bring him along.
Championship pedigree right
now.
Exactly.
You got to bring him along. He's a good piece. I think Moody is probably the best, young piece that they have. And unfortunately, people are going to want him. If you're going to try to make a trade, Moody's got to go. And that's like the best, and what's the white kid from St. Mary's? I don't know how to say his last name.
Santa Clara, you talking about?
Or Santa Clara, yeah.
Yeah, he's really, really good.
Yeah, so you have to get rid of those pieces to even be formidable. And those are some of the best pieces that you have outside of Steph.
Now, when you talked about development, so do you think development just kind of lost its way throughout? Because you got to think about Golden State when they first started with Steph, Clay, and Draymond, all three guys that people had huge question marks when they came in, when they got drafted. And Steph had ankle injuries. Like, people didn't think he could even kind of play through his ankle injuries, but now he's become the player he is. Mm-hmm. I felt like development was really something big for Golden State, especially as they're building up their core. Do you feel like the development just kind of got lost as they started winning, or do you feel like that's just kind of where they've been?
I think the development got lost when Mark Jackson was fired. He developed those young people, and I don't want to take away from Steve Kerr. He took those people, made the pieces work, and turned it into a machine where they were able to win championships. But I have not seen the development from Golden State like people talk about. I just haven't. I think that Steve Kerr inherited some really good pieces, and ultimately those players were on the rise. He was able to take them, make it work. Put Draymond here, get it going there, and credit to him because that is coaching as well. But I have not seen, who have they developed?
Yeah.
Jordan Poole has always been offensively super talented. And hell, I'm going to be more talented too when I'm playing next to Steph and I get to just rock out all the time because Steph has 2 people on him. Like, I just don't see it. What can you give me somebody that they've really developed? I don't know.
I guess maybe not in developed, but really utilized and kind of got a lot out of him. I think Poole at a certain point, you know, what he was doing in their championship run. I thought Andrew Wiggins, kind of how they remember Andrew Wiggins before when he was in Minnesota. And he came there, people called him a horrible defender, and look how he was defending and he was making plays. He was an integral part of their championship team. I feel like they have done a pretty good job on some of these players, even Kevon Looney. Like, just who would have thought, honestly, he was starting center like in the league, especially when he saw his high school highlights where he was doing wing skills. But I thought they did a good job of utilizing guys. I think they did a good job of utilizing role players and maximizing them when their star players were really, really good. Like, you know, when Steph, Clay, and Draymond are doing what they're doing, but Andrew Wiggins is like this defensive specialist, athletic, you know, rebounder, finisher, scorer, and Kevon Looney is getting 20 rebounds a game, and Jordan Poole is also bringing a real scoring punch off the bench. I thought they did a good job of maximizing role players to fit their star players. I don't think they did a good job of now. At some point, Steph and Clay and Draymond can't shoulder this much of the load. So now Wiggins, it can't be this series you're going off. Now it's 82 games plus this and that you got to go off. I don't think they did a good job of turning those role players into stars. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That is what I feel. I feel like they did a good job of maximizing those guys into their role to fit Clay and Steph in their peak. I don't think they did the best of jobs of now, hey, now you got to carry them some more. Now you can't just take 20%. Now y'all going to take 40 to 50%. And in the season, Steph and Clay are going to have to sit out 30 games because of rest. And, you know, they're older and Draymond's not going to be there, blah, blah, blah. So you want to have to lead us to more wins. So if they're out 30 games, we at least need to go 20-10, you know, 18-13. You see what I'm saying? Like something along the lines of that. I don't think they did a good job at getting those guys into that role.
Okay.
I think when it came to transitioning, I feel like they did a bad job of that.
I think that I totally agree with that point. Like, and that's kind of what I'm speaking to too, but I'm just speaking to as well. Like the system, you know, is what allowed, they had to get the right players. Don't get me wrong, but the maximized role in the system too is also what helped. Like, you know, Jordan Poole got a crazy payday and we see what it looks like when he's not playing alongside Steph. I'm just saying.
Right.
When the scouting report changes, it's different. Jordan Poole got to benefit. He got to benefit from being Steph's sidekick, sometimes coming off the bench. Steph is demanding a double team at all times. So Jordan Poole is rocking out. And now in Washington, he's playing crazy and putting the ball behind his back, doing all kinds of crazy stuff he wouldn't dare think about doing if he was on Draymond's team, one. And two, as talented as he is offensively, and I'm very high on just his offensive bag and what he's able to do. Like he's super talented, but it looks a little different when you're the focal point. So that's my point. Like I totally agree with them maximizing those guys that they got or whatever. But one, you know, I think it's a little, we saw at the beginning of the season, it was hard for Steve Kerr to even go away from Clay and Draymond. Like Clay, he had to have a heart-to-heart with Clay just a month ago and say, pal, you know, you ain't it anymore. But like, why is it hard for you to go away from him when you have Moody? There was games where Moody was killing, but because Clay has to finish the game because he loves and respects Clay, they lost. So I'm saying like you have to be willing to go away when something's not working. Everybody on that team is tradable with the exception of Stephen Curry, and I stand on that. That's it.
That makes sense. And I think the key on it, as you kind of mentioned, get the money before people know you can't play. And or make a trade before you lose your value. That's mainly the 2 points I get out of all this. You know what I mean? Like,
correct.
It's difficult to be motivated. I was always the question with. We go back to Andrew Wiggins, even back to high school. God, he was talented. he's about one of the talented wings have I seen in the last 20 years. And everybody's like, oh, it's so easy for him. He goes through the motions, and then he got the big payday. And then it just kind of was like the years went by. And then he finally got like a light in his rear end, and it worked for that 1 year. And now we're back to how good is he? You know, like, is he going to be motivated? It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. Not an easy job for these guys. So do you guys want to go in a second team, or do you want to switch to just a player that you think needs a change of scenery?
We can do player.
Yeah, let's do a player, since we spent a lot of time on that. I guess in actuality, Chelsea, you're saying the Warriors dynasty is done. Pretty much.
Over.
It's pretty much done. Wow. And that happens fast. It happens fast. We weren't saying that, 8 months ago or whatever it may be. So I'll start with you, Ani. Player on any team that needs just a change of scenery as this deadline gets closer.
Oh, I'll say Zach LaVine. I just think the whole Bulls need to change, but especially Zach LaVine. I would kind of really want to see what he's made of. Like,
yeah,
I think for me is that, okay, Chicago is just hitting this mediocrity trail, kind of like what the Toronto Raptors are kind of doing right now, like Chelsea pointed out. I really want to see Zach LaVine on like a playoff contending team and see what he's made of. It's just more for my intrigue. I would say Zach LaVine, trade him from the Bulls, put him somewhere where they need some guard wing scoring needed, and just see. I mean, we just haven't really seen him in like a real competitive team where it's like, okay, like you need to put up 22 to 24 points a night, or they're going to win or lose. Like, I don't know exactly what he's made of in that aspect. So to me, Zach LaVine.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, like you said, Chicago Bulls kind of in the same boat they were last year, close to 500, right out of the playoffs. You know, and they tried various lineups when he was out, and now they're trying to obviously play a lot of guys because they want other teams to realize that they have some value if they make a trade, right? You got to play players in order to get them value. So I think there's a few teams like the Bulls where they're going deep into the rotation because they want other teams to say, hey, we have a player here that you might want in a trade. So that's that. How about you, Chelsea?
I have a couple players, but I guess the one that's most pressing on my mind is probably DeJounte Murray. And that's because he's been coming up in trade talks with my team, the Lakers. But he's just too talented. And individually, he's worked on his game. Like, I don't know if you guys watched this year. He's shooting the 3-ball like significantly better. And I'm really just a fan of the way that he's played. He is a product of the development of the San Antonio Spurs, where we just talked about development, who developed him and Kawhi Leonard and so on. And I would really like to see him on a team that can contend, even if it's not the Lakers, because I just feel like he would be a very formidable piece. I think the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray experiment is over now. Like, I mean, we tried it, it didn't it didn't move the needle, in my opinion. So, I feel like they're going to part ways with one of them. And, I don't think it would be Trae, but maybe Trae might need a change of scenery too. I'm hearing his name come up with, San Antonio, maybe pairing him with Wemby, who's in desperate need of somebody who can just read the floor and lob the ball up to him. So I think that would kind of be a very interesting dynamic, especially because Wemby is such a force defensively that I feel Trae Young needs to be surrounded by people that can really defend, because we know that he struggles with that. So to have, maybe Trae Young's guarding on the perimeter, he gets blown by and Wemby's there to save the day. That might be a dynamic that can work. So, those two people. And then last, I'm just going to say this, we were just talking about the Warriors. Please put Klay Thompson out of his misery and send him to a new place. And I really say this because I feel for him. I understand how it is to have significant injuries. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I understand how hard and how difficult it is to come back. But at the same time, I think he needs the change of scenery because mentally he just can't deal with the decline, just physically and in his play. And also in his mind, his wheels are spinning. He turned down a 2-year, $48 million contract at the beginning of the season with the Warriors. That's no longer on the table anymore. So mentally, that kind of stuff, I think, sits on you. And I think that he's playing really bad, but it's not because he's actually that bad. Like, I think if he can just recalibrate and just say, hey, I'm going to go to this team. Hey, I don't have the legs that I used to have. So now I'm all catch and shoot, fresh start, not worried about a contract, not worried about, trying to prove to people that he can still play, I think it might do him some justice.
That's fair enough. Yeah, those are good players. Those are interesting insight. Yeah, it the fortunes change fast in the league, as we said many times. I'm looking at the Hawks, and they were in the conference finals 2 years ago. Now they're 16-23. So it's like, boy, what changed? I mean, because they have Onyeka Okongwu. I just think, is it just a matter of, for lack of a better term, they're too light in the ass and defensively, and then those two guys are never going to work together? Is that basically what it is, or is their production just different? Did maybe somebody off the bench has changed? Because they have some decent pieces, but it's not going to be championship material.
It's the defense, and we talked about this previously with Indiana. We were talking about the in-season tournament, how they score a lot of points and run like crazy. But at the end of the day, if you can't guard and you can't get stops, like, it's hard to win, and it's hard to win anything, the in-season tournament and especially the championship, because it's a total different level when people are locking in the playoffs. And I'm bringing up Indiana randomly, but they're doing very well. Besides, Halliburton's out for a couple weeks now with the hamstring pull, but they were doing very well. But I would even be intrigued to see what they're going to do in the playoffs. It's a different level, and people are not going to just let you run around and run the score up. You have to guard, and the games are more in the early hundreds, as opposed to Trae Young and them have had games in the 145. That's not happening anymore. Wow. Like when the games are being played for real.
Nope. Yeah, you're right. So we'll be interested. We could talk a lot more about the NBA. I'm sure we will when the trade deadline comes and the teams kind of make their playoff run. We can sit here and talk about many more teams. I know many more players. So let's switch gears, and I guess we'll close out the show with all the MLK stuff. Ani, just real high line. What is your number one thing you took away from all the action all over the country, Bass Pro, Hoop Hall? What's the one thing that came out? And then Chelsea, I'll jump to you. Then you guys can ask me whatever you want.
What's the one thing that came out of all this? Montverde's beatable, very beatable. I think that's a big thing. Before, I was like, man, they're gonna sweep really get everybody. That prolific game, and just even what I seen from City of Palms, they're beatable. Montverde is beatable, so it's going to be very interesting to see what it looks like, when they get to the Scholastic League, kind of get into the championships, Geico and stuff like that. Kind of how this team comes about. But for me, I think it's just Montverde they're more vulnerable than I realized. Like they're not like Kate Cunningham's group where you're just looking like, sheesh, like. That was a different level. Like they shouldn't be they're not as fearful as that team. So I think for me, that's my biggest take.
Okay. Chelsea?
Well, I didn't get to watch as many games this weekend as I would have liked, but just looking at the scores, Columbus came alive, and I've been, a little critical of them and Cam Boozer, on our last couple pods, but wow, they had two big wins over the weekend over number 2 and number 3.
Yeah, Paul.
So that's gonna, lead to maybe a shift in the FAB 50. So I'm gonna ask you, Ronnie. You dropped the new FAB 50 updated rankings. Like, talk to me about what's changed, because there was a lot of really good games over the weekend that maybe shifted the board a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll go to our FAB 50 spotlight, switch right to that, and it's kudos to all the teams that travel. Hope everybody got home safe. Now we're shooting on this Tuesday afternoon. A lot of teams are getting back, had to go to school. I'm sure some schools were canceled across the country, but I kind of mentioned that last week when we were talking about our midseason All-American team. I thought Columbus might play good because they've played in many, many good games. Just some of them they've dropped. They have 4 losses, but they've been right there. It's just a matter of getting over the hump, maybe getting a open shooter to knock down a couple shots. Mm-hmm. And Jace Richardson, the Michigan State commit, he's really played well. So like you said, led them to wins over Long Island Lutheran on Saturday, and then Long Island Lutheran had come in at number 2, and then they beat them pretty good, almost by 20 points, big fourth quarter, and then Monday come back and beat Paul VI, and that one's even better because Paul VI did win the Bass Pro. Paul VI beat St. John Bosco pretty handily, Ani, in the final, and they had beat McEachern in the semifinal. So, Jace Richardson, as you guys mentioned, he just played really well, had a couple 20-point games, big moments, came up with big shots, and they had complete lines. Him and Boozer really had complete lines. Let me go to them real quick. But yeah, I would just want to say, kind of like rattle off his numbers. And Ani, I'll ask you real quick while I pull that up. Like, anything else you've seen from them that maybe is a little different than earlier in the season?
No, I just think Cameron Boozer is just kind of mixing more of his inside out presence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I saw the City Palm, like, he's one of those kids that just like, I try not to be overly critical, right?
Sure.
Because he'll still end up with like 18 and 11,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I didn't see as much kind of dancing on the perimeter or settling. Yeah. I saw more, hey, I'm going to use my big body. I'm going to use my strength and my size and my athleticism to get easier shots for me and my teammates. That's what I saw. I thought he did a better job of exploiting the gravity he generates on offense. And I think that allows like Jason, Caden, those other guys, the other big kind of forward wing to really just
Malik Abdullahi.
Malik, I think he did a better job just executing off the gravity he generates on offense.
No doubt. So that's a good point. And to your point, creating that space, creating other opportunities. So Jace Richardson, in the Lehigh game, 81-62, 20 points, 8 of 12 from the field, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 blocks, 4 steals. That's a complete game for him. Mm-hmm. And then come back against Paul, team high 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. That's like really good numbers. So kudos to Jace Richardson.
Wait, real quick, Ronnie, can Jace creep into McDonald's? McDonald's selection is coming up. Like, I know he's like on the outside looking in right now, but he's not.
I think it's too little. I think it's too late. We'll get to that later in the show, but I think it's too late. A little too late in the race for him, in my opinion, just to jump in. I just think it's a little late.
But he is playing like one.
Yeah, he's playing. There's a few guys that are playing like one. Again, you build that resume. I just don't think because of the injuries he had at Gorman, the summer leading into this, then I think that would be the thing. The voters are going to look back and they're going to vote for guys who they've seen and play really good in the summer and into last year. Unfortunately, Chelsea, that's a lot of it. The reason why your guy Kawhi didn't make the McDonald's is because it started too late. Like you know what I mean? People didn't know him that early. So to that point, I think that's the problem, the injuries. So, that how Paul did really helped Columbus. And then another big key for Columbus was what you mentioned, Ani. Prolific gave Montverde a hell of a game. Well, Columbus beat them in overtime. So the new order would be Montverde stays at number 1, 18-0. Columbus now from 8-2. The 2 wins over 2 and 3 elevates them. And then obviously them beating Prolific and Prolific taking Montverde down to the wire. Number 4 would be Paul the 6th with their good showing so far. Only losses are to Columbus and to Montverde. Link comes in at 5. Their losses are to Prolific in a game I thought you saw, Ani, Montverde. And Paul. And then their 4th loss is to Lehigh, but they overcome that because Lehigh has to drop because they lost to AZ Compass. Were you a little surprised, Ani, that Lehigh lost to AZ Compass? Or is it just the nature of the league,
Yeah, I think it's kind of the nature of it. I think AZ Compass is kind of they look different than what they did when I saw them at Hoop Hall West. Okay. You can tell they're now playing more together. There's more continuity. There's more chemistry. There's more belief. I know his coach is year 1. I think now there's more of a belief in like they're just more disciplined. So am I surprised? Yeah, but like I think we all seen AZ Compass this season. It's like I didn't think they had a talent problem completely. Like, are they as explosive as the teams in the past? No, but I thought they had a team this year that's good enough to compete against a lot of guys. It just were they just going to come together, and it seems like that's what they're doing. Hopefully that stays. But like I think talent wise, they could always beat a team like Lehigh. And Lehigh, to me, sometimes they can kind of be up and down in games.
Sure.
I felt like they shouldn't have lost that game, but I also did think like AZ just like the 50-50 balls AZ won, like just finishing around the rim, offensive rebounds. Like I thought AZ just wanted that game. Or I thought Lehigh kind of in the later stretches, that fourth quarter, even 9 OT, I thought AZ just completely outdid them. But like I thought the finishing of that fourth quarter, I thought AZ wanted the game more.
Wanted it a little tough. Yeah, that's what they're known for, to be tough. They got some good pieces, like you said. Luke Bamboy is a hell of a shot blocker. They got another forward, Sammy Yanai, who does a good job. He's tough. He's an under the rim type of guy, you know, but he's tough and he's good. So credit to them, and I don't want to take away from them completely because they've had some good wins. So then, you know, coming back to that Monday, again, McEachern has to come back. They won the third place game over the team from Oklahoma who was in the FAB 50. And Edmond North, Ace Bailey, your guy, Rutgers commit, Ani, he had a big turnaround shot. So then they had to go from Springfield, Missouri to Springfield, Mass. Then they fall behind against Harvard Westlake. They're down 18, and then they just kind of pick it up. Ace Bailey was kind of shooting his outside shot, kind of like Chelsea says about Cam, maybe floating a little too much. And we're going to talk about that at the end, the elite players. But at the end of the day, they made it a 1-point game. They lost. So that looks good, too, for Columbus, because Columbus beat Harvard Westlake in a game that you saw, Chelsea, very close. So, again, that Harvard Westlake does good, if McEachern does good, all that, everything worked out in Columbus's favor. Prolific did good. McEachern did good. So it all worked out in their favor to get them to number 2. So it's kind of, again, they do have their 4 losses, but it's kind of like a thing of what you have done lately. And the one other game that I wanted to talk about before we switch to the players, and Ani, I know you were looking forward to this one, Stepanak and Don Bosco Prep. Were you surprised by the team outcome? I know you weren't surprised by how the individual talent did.
No, I wasn't really too surprised by the team outcome. I thought it could go either way.
Sure.
With that, I thought both teams were just kind of were about the same as far as like just from a talent standpoint. But you know, I was there for the players. I didn't care about that. I didn't care about the team on that one. I thought the teams were actually fairly evenly matched. I felt that way. I felt like from a talent standpoint. But I just really think two of the 2 best point guards in that class went at each other.
Yeah. And that was a great game. And again, Stepanak comes away with that win. Archbishop Stepanak out of New York. So they jump all the way up. They obviously need a bump because Don Bosco Prep has a hell of a resume. So they're up from 17 to 41. So they're now 1 spot ahead of Don Bosco, who was at number 7, Long Island Lutheran's new spot. And Don Bosco's only lost to Long Island Lutheran, Patrick School, and now Archbishop Stepanak. So Archbishop Stepanak's resume is pretty damn good now, Ani. If you really look at it, they lost a close game to IMG. They lost to St. Rose and Montverde. Obviously, a lot of teams are going to lose to Montverde. But as you mentioned, talk a little bit about Boogie Flan and just doing it and shot making, and Dylan Ritvo as well, kind of an under-recruited guy. But like you said, taking shots that are good shots and taking shots that lead to winning basketball instead of just showcasing your talent.
Yeah, I think Boogie he's continued to show like that balance. He can really score the basketball, but he makes timely shots. He takes quality shots. He rarely are you going to see him just take a lot of forced shots as well, but he can take them and make them, and it's okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you live with that. I just think it's his feel. It's that he understands how to manage a game. He understands how to lead. He understands when to get others involved. He knows how to read defenses, no matter how you guard him. Yeah, he's reading it and he's figuring out how to still get his and still create for others. He really communicates, like, you know, you see how he like talks to his teammates, encourages teammates. Like that's him and VJ Edgecombe. Like those are 2 things that really kind of stands out with me. Even Dylan Harper is the same way. Like Boogie just efficient. Even when he's not efficient, he knows how to impact games without his scoring. if that's being vocal, that's competing more on the defensive end. If he feels like his team's not really rebounding, he'll kind of get in there, just get in the mix. Maybe not even get the rebound, but just box out. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen him play through injuries and stuff like that and just keep fighting. I think the team goes with his toughness, and he's a very tough kid.
Yeah, for his slight frame.
And I think that's why Stepan has been successful. I think that's why he's been successful. And like, you know, everyone says the cream always rises to the top. Like, I think, he's a Kentucky commit, so I ain't gonna say he's underrated or anything like that. But
sure,
you know, to me, outside of Dylan Harper, I can't name a point guard that's been playing better than him, that is better than him in the country.
Yeah, he's had a really awesome showing, and it's been rewarded. Chelsea, I don't know if you have any closing remark or question for either one of us on that, and then we'll switch to kind of like you mentioned about the McDonald's and the elite players, but if you have any closing remarks about that.
Well, I just want to piggyback too on Boogie. I did actually get to see the last quarter of that game. And just to Ani's point, like, he plays with impeccable pace. And I don't think that people understand how important that is when you're especially transitioning from level to level. Like, the pace changes incredibly, and the way you're able to manage it is basically how successful that you are. You know, sometimes you see really good high school players and the game is too fast for them in college.
Sure.
But that's not going to be the case for Boogie. He's going to fit right in. So just to kind of piggyback on Ani's comments. But for you two, I want to know, in the games that you watch, and you guys can give me a couple players if you wish, but in the games that you watch, who helped themselves the most? Like, give me one or two players that you feel this weekend, MLK weekend, the showings, their collective, individual performances amongst a couple of games, who really increased their stock, and you can actually give me somebody who may have decreased as well, but just start with who helped themselves the most this weekend. Each of you give me a player.
Ooh. Ronnie, you want to go first?
I'll go first. Because of the player we mentioned in our preview, and we wrote about it on the .com, and we talked about it last week, Jalil Bethia. So he dropped 40 points in a game they won on his 2 free throws against Corona Centennial. And again, Jalil Bethia should make the McDonald's game, I think, he's ranked high enough in the various rankings. Again, his team is maybe not having the greatest season, but to have 40 points against a guy going to UCLA like Eric Freeney and Carter Bryant, who's wants to make a good showing, like, that's a pretty big performance, So Jalil Bethia from March Bishop would be my choice. He was kind of a player we spotlighted, and he came through with the big game when he needed it. Secondly, I'll take a second player, and let me see for a second player. Ooh, that's pretty interesting. I like Jeremiah Fears from AZ Compass Prep, the team you said. They kind of he's a hell of a player. I think he keeps himself. Chelsea, me and you saw him in Vegas. They didn't really lose to Montverde by that much. They were really getting blown out. It didn't look like they were going to win that game, but he showed that he had some stuff.
He wasn't bad.
Yeah, he wasn't bad, and I think he keeps showing as junior point guard. Again, I think to Ani's point, the other pieces and the forwards are really coming along, rebounding, hedging on defense, playing good teams, so that the results are showing. And Jeremiah Fears is a big shot maker. He's kind of slightly built like Boogie Flan is, but he's fearless, and I think he did a good job this weekend. So those would be my 2 players.
Nice. Those are good picks. Go ahead, Ani.
For me, I would say Nicholas, I want to make sure I'm saying Kamenia from Harvard Westlake. I know we talked about him, I think, on the last pod. Against McEachern, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. His skill set is he's not above the rim guy, but he skill and feel with him. He just knows how to just win basketball games. That's kind of what I see from him. Like, and that's why I like Boogie, but he kind of does it in this like forward role, like this forward role. Like, he can handle it some. He can really pass. He can shoot it. He's like a high IQ, like team defender, right? Like, is he like the quickest laterally? No, but he understands angles. He knows when to get the spots. Like, he's so smart on the floor and skilled that he just knows how to always be productive. So with him, I was really impressed by him. I think he's someone that I think he's probably top 50 in the country, and that's probably should see more of a boost. I mean, he's very productive.
No doubt.
I'll say Jace Richardson. We talked about him earlier as well. Like, how good he's been. Like Ronnie talked about, he's been hurt. Like, this is the first real full season. Seeing how he can adjust, playing with guys like Columbus. They've had the Boozer twins. They've been winning. You know what I mean? So still being able to come into that role and being able to really excel in that role and be a spark defensively, intercept passing lanes and be that a spark offensive as well. Like I saw him at City of Palms too. Like I thought he just works to get a lot done, and not someone that may be like a terrific shooter, right? But like he just finds a way to put the ball in the hole.
Yeah.
So for me, I think seeing him mesh with the guys, with other really good players, and still be very productive, and sometimes be that guy to kind of shoulder, like low-key shoulder to load sometimes. Very impressive. So I would say those two, help themselves.
Got you. To Kamenia, we talked about it, and we should get him on the pod. We'll get him on the next few weeks. They got a couple big games this week, so I don't think he'll be available this week. We'll get him though soon, because I'll talk about that before we close out. But Ani, he didn't always guard Ace Bailey, but when it came down to it in the fourth quarter, when it mattered, he was face guarding him and he slowed him down just enough.
Right.
Make the difficult shot. Now, he did make one or two baseline shots over him, but other couple of times he denied him, didn't get the ball where he wanted in his spot, or made the shot a little more difficult. And then on the game-winning play, he was guarding him, and the inbound pass, they were trying to go over the top to Bailey and maybe get a shot in the key. And his defense made a big difference, So we should definitely get him on the pod. It made a big difference. Again, a future NBA player, you're not going to stop him completely. He still had 23 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 big blocks, speaking of Ace Bailey. But just enough, Ani, like you said, just enough. He was 1 for 7 from deep. So, again, if Kamenian and those Harvard Westlake wasn't concentrating on defense, that could have been 3 for 7 or 2 for 7. That would have made a big difference in a 1-point game. 100%. So to your point, that made a big difference. And that's what we want to close on, is talking about the elite players. And now we go to the more of a hot take on these players, as away from the team spotlight and I'll start with you, Chelsea, and you're watching players. You mentioned it with Boozer, and we kind of could talk about a little bit with Ace Bailey and others, maybe even Cooper Flagg. When you hear so much about on these telecasts, and you hear the announcers talk so much about the rankings and so much about the future NBA drafts, like, do we forget that this is just a high school game? You need to do what you need to do to win the high school game first, more than like Ace Bailey, he's Paul George. He's the next Paul George. It's like, is there too much hyper focus on that? Or is that just the nature of the beast in the industry?
I mean, it's definitely the nature, but it's also too much focus. I mean, we criticize the media quite a bit on this show, and just how, they put a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation on these kids. And I understand that they're, the future of the NBA and that league, but at the same time, like, they're still kids. So when I think of the high school game and just, I'll name a few people that you just listed off, like just being critical of Cam Boozer, he knows that he's going to have his opportunity in the NBA. And I think sometimes he plays like he's trying to prove to people, this is what I can do. Like, hey, I can shoot the long ball. I can shoot the three. I saw him shoot multiple threes, 4 or 5 feet off the line. And as somebody who is just now seeing him, he wasn't dominant to me because he wasn't using his best asset, which is his body. So when I got the opportunity to see him at Le Schwab in Oregon, he wasn't bad, because like Ani said, he's going to get a double-double no matter what. Right. But I'm expecting pure dominance from a kid who is way bigger than everybody that's on the floor. But instead, he's working on his perimeter game. He's playing with the ball. He's trying to shoot. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't work on that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But in the moment, just, play your best, and your best game is a certain way. And I think, the media has made kids kind of just get away from that because of, all the pressure and stuff that we put on them. And the same with a player like Cooper Flagg. Like, I'm on Twitter, and media and articles are saying like he's generational and stuff. Just don't set these kids up. Okay. The NBA is like, he's going to college first. So let's start there. Can he be a good college player before he, is a generational NBA player? Just let these articles tell it. And you have to be so special to even make it to the NBA that if he's able to and fortunate enough to get there, which I'm sure he will, it's okay if he's just a regular player. It's hard. Like
right.
hard. So I'm not a fan of all this stuff. And I know that it's the media's job. And even I guess we can be considered media in a sense with how we give our takes and are critical of the players. But at the same time, I'm still very aware that these are kids and that they're learning and that they're growing. And the player that they are today could very well not be the player that they are, 5 years from now. So I just try to keep that in perspective. And I like to see the kids what they do the best in this moment and just kind of stay present with the process. Right now you're in high school. When you get to college, that's a new battle. And when you get to the NBA, that's even, a tougher one. So that's it.
Yeah, for me, Ronnie, one thing I've told you this before, why I really do respect you for numerous reasons, but this one, you really value winning. And players that win. And I think winning translates. I think sometimes when we call someone this next player or that next player or whatever, and it's years ahead, like Chelsea said. But sometimes we saying this about kids and they done took an L. Or they done lost 3 out of the last 4 games. My boy Courtney Brooks out of Houston, he asked some questions like, it's a summer program. Can you really expect to win with guys that play for losing high school teams? In a way, he kind of said it in that way. Maybe not saying verbatim, but in a way, he said that. Yeah. And that's a good point. Like, I think winning really matters. I think sometimes we lose track of how important winning is, and we're seeing someone's stat line and this, that, and the third. Yeah, and it's like, okay, sometimes a guy's team is just bad, and he's doing everything they can. And then sometimes you're like, man, why is it everywhere you go, you lose? Why can't you win? I think sometimes we lose focus on the team's performance. We look at the player. But at the same time, you got to look at it at the very top in the NBA. We do the same thing. As much as I love watching Victor Wembanyama play, the Spurs are 7-30.
Yes,
every time he plays. We talk about his stat line, right? Yeah. So if you're seeing it there, what do you think you're going to see it at our level? At this level.
Exactly.
So,
it's happening at our level as well. Yeah.
Right. So it's part of the business, but we can never lose track of winning really matters. And not calling Victor a loser. It's just that, look, Spurs do suck this season, but boy, we hyping him up. You would think the Spurs are at least at 500 by the way they, and eventually they will be a way better team. But we see it at the highest level, so we're going to see it at our level because no doubt media is going to mimic what they see at the
higher levels. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't. When I see McEachern and Harvard Westlake in a good game, and obviously Ace Bailey's the best prospect on the floor. He is. Mm-hmm. That's doesn't take much to know that. But when he's driving to the key, it's like he may be the number 1 pick in the future draft. What does it have to do with the play? And we keep hearing that over like 7 or 8 times during the telecast. I'm like, guys, talk about what is their run. They have on the 11-2 run. It make the high school game even better. Make that game better. And speaking of that is. Yeah, Ace Bailey was I think 1 for 6 or 1 for 7. So to your point Chelsea, is he settling a little too much? Could he go inside? And the announcers did mention that his shot selection could be a little better, but it had nothing to do with him is he maybe surpassed Cooper Flagg as the number 1 prospect in this class? It had no relevance to that moment.
Right.
The more relevant moment was them going from Bass Pro to get there, playing a game, get up at an early game, play good against a really good team, and win that game. And then for Harvard Westlake, you won that game. Now you got to travel back to the West Coast, and they got to play undefeated Notre Dame and Mercy Miller tomorrow on Wednesday the 17th, and they got to play Sierra Canyon on Friday. That's the story. That would make your storyline of what you're telling for a 1-point game a lot better. We don't need to know where they're ranked in the class every other possession. It's just
or the draft. Oh, the draft stuff. I agree with you because, like, how
Yeah.
many mock drafts, 2024 mock drafts have we seen and new number one? Like, I remember, like, when they would say, oh, this guy's projected new number one. I remember Modest and Ron Hall. Now, all of a sudden, people have him 11, 10, and all of this places. It's like, it's so irrelevant because that stuff changes, like, every 2 days. So for me, it's like, what does it mean that Ace Bailey is the projected number one player in the 225 draft? What
has
does
no
that
meaning to Harvard Westlake?
It means nothing because that thing is going to change 50 damn times before he gets drafted. He may be number one, but it's so irrelevant.
It's so irrelevant. And that's the main point I wanted to take. So I think all three of us are on the same take. Maybe a little bit more about the greatness of the storylines of the high school. And there's a ton of storylines out there. And we're going to see, again, Harvard Westlake has to bounce back. You know, Notre Dame with Mercy Miller, Masterpiece Son, playing great, averaging over 30 points a game. They're 20-0 up to number 21. And then 2 days later, they got to play Sierra Canyon, who only has one loss. So Harvard Westlake has a lot going on. So we'll be watching it. But I think for the rest of everybody, you know, hopefully we gave you guys some good insight. We try to name as many players as we can. Go to the website, ballislife.com. Check out the new FAB. It just dropped about a few hours ago. Obviously, I had to factor in all the Monday MLK Monday results and all, you know, takes time. But you know, I'm really appreciative of you two jumping on, dropping your knowledge and talking about what we can. And I'm glad I know for Ani that we didn't get on at like 11 o'clock Central time. So anything else from you two as we close out?
Nope.
No, you guys are good. We're good to go. Yeah, well, for next week, guys, we will be on, and hopefully Chelsea could join us. I don't know if she'll be snowed in or what her agenda will be at the time, but we'll have the reaction to the McDonald's pick. So we're going to wait for the teams to come out publicly, and then me, Ani, and hopefully Chelsea, maybe another special guest will give our input, talk about the team. We've been talking about it the last 3 or 4 pods. It's you know, we're gonna no more talking about it. We'll break down who actually made it and who's deserving and all the topics and trends. So until then, until those McDonald's teams are announced, we'll talk to you guys next time.